What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can freely express themselves. Straight up, no chaser. Yeah. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. No stone will be left unturned, and we are able to be critical of any theory, especially feminist theory. So, what I want to do today is kind of go over an article that I ran across from Essence Magazine. The author of the article, her name is Nyla Burton, and the title of the article is, "As a Black woman in this country, I feel I need to bear arms." So it's not a long article, and I'm just going to go into it. And after having read it in various parts of it, I'm going to give you my analysis or my assessment of the coherency of the article and what I disagree with. Okay? So the article starts off as follows, and I quote, "On April 30th, hundreds of white protesters, several of them carrying assault rifles, Confederate flags, Nazi symbols, and nooses, clamored in Lansing, Michigan to protest stay-at-home orders enacted to protect the public from the deadly COVID-19 pandemic, which has killed almost 80,000 people in the United States. In response to the protest, 3 black community activists showed up to the Capitol, where it is legal to bear arms, with their own rifles, intending to safely escort black lawmaker Representative Sarah Anthony, who's a Democrat from Michigan, into the building." Okay, so far so good. No problems there. Just a straight accounting of the facts. And let's go back to the article. And she's quoting someone here. I think she's quoting Anthony, the black lawmaker. And here it is. "We were all just appalled by the lack of support and lack of security that I had, that other legislators had, and the fact that a lot of the demonstrators last week were adorning many racist, anti-Semitic signage," Anthony told City Post. "I think it just triggered a lot of folks, especially African Americans." Okay, so basically, the lawmaker, Sarah Anthony, is just making a statement that there's no security for the lawmakers there. So she decided to bring in her own security, namely some armed black people, right? And if you're going to have armed white people showing up with swastikas and other imagery that could be considered to be racially offensive, then why not? Why not come to the event or to any lawmaking session with your own security and have black men or women armed? No problem, right? It's a show of force from black people. It's a demonstration that we will protect ourselves. If you want to clown, you want to come with guns, we got guns too. You got guns, we got guns. And I don't see anything problematic with that, okay? I'm going back to the article. "A few days after this incident, Black America was triggered yet again by the leaking of a horrific video showing the February 23rd killing of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery by 2 white male assailants, father-son duo Gregory McMichael, age 64, and Travis McMichael, age 34. On May 7th, after 2 months of eluding punishment, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations arrested and charged them with murder. So everybody's pretty familiar with this story by now. You got two rednecks in a pickup truck who are trying to, as far as their story goes, they're trying to perform a citizen's arrest on someone they assume to be a thief or a burglar in the area. And we've already, most of us in the black manosphere we've already seen the extra footage of Arbery going through some vacant home, right? And he may have been trespassing. He may have been. I don't know. I'm not trying to speculate. I just don't know. But even if he, but just let's assume that he was trespassing. Let's assume that the worst of all scenarios, that the man had run off with something that was stolen from that property that he had trespassed in. In my view, that still doesn't give those men, I'm speaking of Gregory McMichael and Travis McMichael, it did not give them the right to apprehend Arbery with deadly force. Period. Now you're talking about retribution, you're talking about justice. There's no compensation for death. You can compensate for trespassing. You can compensate for theft, but you can never compensate for death unless there's another death. But one could argue that's not really compensation at all. I mean, there's a famous saying, if we want to go an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, then the whole world will end up blind and toothless. But I mean, at the end of the day, people have the right to protect themselves. And if somebody else does you harm, you can reasonably expect for harm to be revisited upon you. But let's get back to the article. I mean, you get my point. So then she says, the trauma of this brutal lynching, combined with the powerful imagery of three black men standing in front of a state capitol with firearms, sparks a needed conversation. Should black people buy guns to protect ourselves from racialized violence, especially during these tumultuous times? Trauma. Trauma of this brutal lynching. So she refers to what occurred to Arbery using lynch language. Now, of course, white people are going to use a different kind of language. Black people are going to consider it to be a new form of lynching. I don't have any big disagreements with this here and her choice of language here, right? But I do want to talk about the word trauma. Trauma for who? Trauma to who? Fear, anxiety for who? Because I can tell you where this is going to go. You already know where it's going to go. Should I let the cat out of the bag right now, or should I wait till later? I think I'm going to wait till later. But I think you all understand how this is going to pan out. Who's really actually traumatized? Well, it ain't going to take long. As a leftist black woman, I desperately wish we had strict gun control. However, I'm uncomfortable not having a firearm. Many who share aspects of my politics are surprised when I express this, seeing it as contradictory. But my views are rooted in the reality of the world I live in now, not the world I long for. So, I mean, she's saying in the best case scenario, there wouldn't be any guns around for people to kill each other with. But since there are, I want to have one so I can protect myself. That's not really contradictory. It's just a statement of the reality in which we're living, right? But then the question becomes, why is she uncomfortable? What makes her uncomfortable? I mean, is this a black man that died, right? And overwhelmingly, black men die from police violence and from extrajudicial killings by vigilantes, whether they be white, brown, whatever the case may be, because we all know the several individuals who were killed by police and through extrajudicial killings. Mike Brown by a police officer in Ferguson, and George Zimmerman killed a young boy, Trayvon Martin, who was going to get tea and Skittles, but looked suspicious. But let's go back to the article. But my views are rooted in the reality of the world I live in now, not the world I long for. And in my world, guns are everywhere. Most often, they're possessed by people who hate me. I hope that she's talking about white people here. I hope she's talking about white people. But she doesn't specify. She keeps it ambiguous. And I think she does that for a purpose. There's a reason why she says that guns are everywhere and they're possessed by people who hate her. You'll see later, because it doesn't come out, it doesn't just pop out like that, but eventually you'll see why. So she says, and she starts to state facts. According to the Pew Research Center, U.S. gun owners tend to skew white, male, and Republican. As a whole, 36% of white people are gun owners, compared to 26% of black people. A 2019 Gallup poll found that 30% of U.S. adults personally own a gun, and 43% live in a gun household. While 43% of men own guns, only 17% of women do. So here we go. From a breakdown of black and white to now a breakdown between men and women. So there's more men that own guns than women own guns. And I'm not opposed at all to women owning guns. Not at all. Not at all. Let me go back to the article. I want gun legislation similar to Australia's, where most firearms are banned and other types of guns, like hunting rifles, are heavily regulated. However, these U.S. statistics and the current political climate show me that well, let me go back and read this because I messed up. However, these U.S. statistics and the current political climate show me that's extremely unlikely, and that many who do own guns pose an imminent threat to my life. So you see how this black woman who is in less danger of being subjected to an extrajudicial killing by anybody else, a white, brown, or even a black person. She's the least likely amongst black folks in terms of demographics to be killed. But she's in fear for her life. I'm telling you, black women put themselves at the center of everything. If this isn't gynocentric, I don't know what is. How is it that black men are dying by the hundreds every year from this kind of violence? And at the most, like maybe 20 women, at the most, 20 women die from this kind of violence in any given year. And 20 is like one of the highest numbers. But black men, you always get somewhere near the upper 200s, and even sometimes the tipping point towards 300. So then the question becomes, what the fuck are you scared of? Why are you afraid? Why are you centering yourself in this conversation? Why? Why? I mean, if this shit ain't narcissistic, to me, it's just narcissistic. A black man dies, you're scared for your life. This is just the perfect means by which to illustrate the ways in which black people are black people when a black man dies, but when a black woman dies of any kind of violence, it's black woman specific. And then black women get on their soapbox and they talk about their gender and how people in their specific gender need to be protected from specific kinds of actions or specific kinds of phenomena. But when it comes to black men, it's all black people. It just pisses me off because it just doesn't stop. It just keeps going and going and going. Then she says, theoretically, I could wait for gun control legislation, but if Donald Trump wins a second term, this won't happen. Even if the presumptive Democratic nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden, wins the general election, things won't change much. Biden's gun safety plan includes a ban on assault weapons and some restrictions on the sale of other firearms, but it will hardly result in a disarmed society, especially now that the coronavirus has led to the highest ever spike in U.S. gun sales. And even if sweeping legislation is passed, the scene outside the Michigan courthouse shows us that white people, especially the growing segment of violent white supremacists, will likely not give up their weapons without violence. No problem with any of that there. And then she goes on to talk about a segment from The View, which basically reiterates her point. I don't know why she has to go to what somebody from The View says in order to substantiate her claim. But hey, I guess it's just another way to point to some women saying something to make it authoritative. Anyway, she says, what gun is the most popular? She says, the AR-15 is by far the most popular gun in America. If you're talking about going and taking people's guns away from them, there's going to be a lot of violence. Maybe so, maybe not. That's just speculation right there. What if the government decided that they were going to take away a lot of people's guns? You think these white boys are going to just start shooting and killing? That may be the case. But it is just speculation. Anyway, she talks about the episode in which one of the hosts talks about this issue, right after the El Paso shooting where 22 people were killed. Where the killer admitted that he was targeting Mexicans, right? And basically, McCain is one of the co-hosts on this show, The View, and she said, I'm not living without guns. It's just that simple. So she too wants to have a gun. So let me go back into the article. Guns are embedded in the racist and violent culture of this country, and I cannot depend on politicians, especially white moderate ones like Joe Biden, to ensure the elimination of these weapons. I cannot depend on them for my safety. But that doesn't mean I'm not concerned about my people clamoring to gain access to guns. Then she says something about herself. As a bipolar woman who has attempted suicide several times, the decision to give myself easy access to a firearm is not a light one. I'm silent for a fucking reason. So you got a bipolar woman who's attempted suicide, who doesn't feel safe from white guys who are racist, who kill less than how many people per year that are black and female in any given year? 20 at the most. So she goes and gets a gun. Bipolar and suicidal at one point. Shit, I mean, you got more to fear from your own fucking self than you do from somebody outside. So she says, as a bipolar woman who's attempted suicide several times, Jesus Christ, the decision to give myself easy access to a firearm is not a light one. While men are 354% more likely to die by suicide, they're also more likely to have access to the most effective method, firearms. Ooh, let me think. So fuck it. Let me put myself in a position where I can die just as likely as a man can from a suicide attempt. Really smart fucking thinking there. And I'm not trying to make light of this woman here, because it's probably a lot of stress and turmoil going on in her life that would prompt her to do something such as commit an act of attempted suicide. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that now you've increased your likelihood of being able to kill yourself from an act of suicide or attempted suicide. So anyway, she says there's a trade-off here, and I quote her, by buying one, I would be risking my life to save my life. Then she says, I also worry about whether our own communities would prioritize giving weapons to those most in danger. Earlier this month, Nina Pop, a 28-year-old black trans woman living in Sikeston, Missouri, was found dead after being stabbed multiple times. The murder of black trans women is an epidemic, and Pop's death is currently being looked into as a possible hate crime. And in the US, 22% of black women in the United States have experienced rape. A 2015 survey of black, trans, and non-binary individuals found that 50% or 56% have experienced domestic violence. Marginalized people are more likely to experience mental illness and abuse. But in some states, having a diagnosed mental illness or experiencing a psychiatric hospitalization makes you ineligible for firearm possession. Duh. So look, okay, so a black man dies. And we know each year somewhere around, let me think. Let me see here. Every year, somewhere around the mid 200s to the tipping point of 300 die from police violence and vigilante violence. Maybe even more than that. Okay? But now we're going to start talking about trans women, black trans women. Their deaths is what? An epidemic? Look, here's the data on this shit, just so you get it straight. In 2018, there were 30 trans deaths. 30 trans deaths. 30. And that ain't, I'm not just blacks either. The whole gamut. All of them. 30. How the fuck is that a goddamn epidemic? I want you to explain to me how that's a fucking epidemic. How is it? How? How, Sway? How? This is starting to piss me off because this shit ain't nothing but feminist talking points right here. That's all this is. She's centering black women and trans women because at every fucking stage of the game, you have to center women. And it's actually a backdoor way to sneak in the fact that black men are fucking dangerous. Because we already know, in all likelihood, these trans women are dying at the hands of men. And that domestic violence deaths of women is going to be performed by men. This is just a way to sneak in, we're abused, we need guns to protect ourselves from men. Under the aegis of being subjected to white homicide, which black women, for the most part, by and large, are not. This is just some disingenuous shit here. I don't like this at all. This boils my fucking blood. If we are to arm black people, she says, we can't fall into patriarchal systems that privilege cisgendered men as wielders of those weapons. We also have to make sure the people with mental illness or a history of substance abuse remain safe, even with firearms in the home. What the fuck does that mean? So basically, you don't want guns to go into the hands of men, but you also want to make sure that people who have mental illness or a history of substance abuse remain safe with firearms in the home. Like, how do you connect those two thoughts? Then how do you get some shit published like this in a reputable magazine? Let me continue. Quote, and our communities must help black trans women with the cost of firearms. So we need to get a fund to make sure that black trans women have some guns. But we need to make sure that if black men have guns, they're not privileged in the owning of guns, even though they die in higher numbers and at higher rates. We need to make sure that black trans women got some guns. And we need to start a fund so we can make sure that they got some guns. Let me just say this shit, and it might piss some people off, but I really don't give a fuck. How about, if you're a trans woman, how about you start disclosing the fact that you are a trans woman? And stop faking the funk and acting like you're not a trans woman. Or, you know what I'm saying? Don't try to act like you're a cisgendered woman, like you were born a woman. But in any event, I'm pretty sure that most men fucking with these transgendered women know that the women are transgendered to fucking begin with. So stop killing them. You gay. If you gay, motherfucker, be gay. I'm not going to sit here and equivocate and oscillate back and forth between this transgender bullshit debate. I don't have time for that. Because we can get caught into all of the talking points of feminist politics, which to me make absolutely no fucking sense at all. I'm not about to play that game. But if you want to fuck around with a transgendered woman, fuck with one. But don't go killing them because they're gay or because they're trans. Leave them the fuck alone. Either fuck with them or don't fuck with them. Don't try to keep it on the low. And then my only message to black trans women is stop being you. You have the capacity to defend yourself just like the next motherfucker. And we already know when it comes to domestic violence. Well, I don't even want to get into that right now, but we do know that black women are just as fucking violent as black men in the context of intimate partner relationships. They're even more violent than black men. I'll leave the link in the fucking description to that also. Now, men are stronger than women. And men are able to hurt women more precisely because, men have 8 to 10 times the amount of testosterone that women have. But that doesn't take away from the fact that black women do kill men. Every year, they kill men. Black men. Yes, this is the truth now. In 2003, black women killed 24 black men. In 2004, black women killed 43 black men. In 2005, 55 black men. 2006, 61 black men. 2007, 55 black men. 2008, 36 black men. 2009, 34 black men. 2010, 39 black men. 2011, 56 black men. 2012, 49 black men. 2013, 44 black men. Killed. Black male victims killed by black women in intimate partner relationships. More than the number of black trans women. Now it's true. More women are killed. But it's like 50-50. In most communities, it's like less than this in terms of percentages and ratios. Black women are killing black men. And let me tell you something about domestic violence. We already know that death occurs in domestic violence situations most likely when the violence is reciprocal, when the two partners are fighting each other. It should come as no strange surprise that women are getting hurt if they insist on fighting their partners. Now, I can't speculate and say that like women are starting all of these fights. I can't do that. But I can say with a degree of certitude that I'm pretty sure that men weren't the start of all of these fights where all of these deaths occurred. I can say that with a degree of speculative certainty. But I'm digressing. But I just want to underscore the point. So this is not an epidemic that needs to be contended with. But no, we're going to jump right into the trans women shit. This is just, it boils my blood because we're not dealing with the reality of pathology in our community. And we're saying that some groups of persons are victims and others are not. And even when you got black male victims, the shit always gets centered around women and what they feel and their fucking safety. And we never push back against this. And it's time for us to start pushing back against it. It's sickening. Black men are dying, and the first thing they do is they start thinking about their own fucking safety. Our communities must help black trans women with the cost of firearms, guide them through the state licensing process. If one exists where they live, provide them with safety skills and training, and address the violent transphobia, homophobia, ableism, and misogyny that exist amongst our own people. Hmm. Hmm. There's also the strong possibility that having guns won't save us, especially from state violence. On March 13th, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency medical technician, was killed in her home by Louisville Metro police officers. Her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who was sleeping next to her before the raid, was accused of shooting one of the officers. He has been arrested and charged with attempted murder, while Walker attorney Rob Eggert argues that he acted in self-defense as a response to police misconduct. Now, I can tell you about that story. Basically, the police performed a no-knock raid hoping to find some drugs. And I can tell you, that shit happened to me once before. And I didn't have a gun by my side when that shit occurred. But let's just say that if I did, I probably would have shot one of the fucking police officers also. In all honesty, the likelihood of these people finding a big cache of drugs is minuscule. They are looking for infinitesimal amounts of dope, not because they really feel like they're doing some fucking drug bust of the century. They're doing this shit to create death and social death for black people, particularly black men. Let's just get that out of the way. That girl didn't have to die, and that man did not have to shoot that officer over this bullshit drug war that we got going on in our country. Despite the danger black folks face every day, Walker's possession of a firearm did not save Breonna's life, and it may not save him from prison. Furthermore, although white people view the right to bear arms as sacrosanct, it can always be taken from black people when we begin to resist against racial terror and state violence. When the Black Panthers declared their intentions to protect themselves with firearms, widespread gun control targeting our communities was enacted after being advocated by the NRA, which notoriously loathes even the most basic of gun control laws. If we do buy guns at higher rates and express our intentions to protect ourselves, the government may retaliate with increased policing, regulation, and even state-sanctioned murder. I have no real problem with that line. I mean, it's true. I mean, California, Ronald Reagan. He was the one, in conjunction with the NRA, that tightened the grip on gun ownership, specifically because the Black Panthers were scary to these white folks. Niggers with guns? Oh, hell no. We got to have some control over this shit. White boys are the ones that are supposed to have all these fucking guns. She says, again, and I quote, "Still, I believe that for many black people, especially those living in predominantly white areas, firearms might prove necessary, and not just for defense, but for food sustainability, which will become more important as the climate crisis worsens." Huh? For food security? Huh? In fact, home birth, natural medicine, farming, hunting, and fishing are all skills I believe black people should turn to as we prepare for the seismic shift that potential political upheaval and environmental collapse may bring. So we supposed to start developing militias and shit with women and trans people? You definitely don't want black men around because there's some fucking scary fuckers, right? The ones who are getting killed the most, we need to make sure that they don't have a lot of guns, and women need to have guns so, they don't kill the nice little black ladies who do no wrong. Although they're responsible for death of black men in at least one third of the time as it pertains to intimate partner homicide. And half of the initiation of acts of violence in the context of intimate partner relationships. The last paragraph she has is, "America is a gun country and it'll destroy itself before it lays down its arms." I agree with that. Then she says, "With the storm that's already here and with the storms we have yet to come, or that have yet to come, the idea of my people laying down our arms first terrifies me." Look, I don't have a problem with anybody owning guns. If you feel like you need to protect yourself and you might be in a place of danger, by all means. If you can legally own a firearm, own one. Train yourself in how to use one. But what I don't like about this article is the way in which it centers black women and trans women, and it vilifies black men as a source of potential danger for other groups of persons. Because if you know, the patriarchy. This is just a way to take black male death and to use it for one's own political interest. This shit is this is unconscionable. That this is what our women are doing. These are the positions that they're taking. So, in other words, this what this means to me is they're flipping the bird at us. Like, fuck you. What happens to you terrifies me, but not for you. It terrifies me for me. We got to push back against this. These kind of narratives are absolutely ridiculous. They're misandrist. They're exploitative. They're manipulative. We have to start pushing back against this. Anyway, man, I've taken too long with this video as it is. Until the next time, be peaceful and have a safe and a good day. 100.